I recently made and published my first YouTube video. As a serious amateur photographer for more than 60 years, and as someone who shot a fair amount of video for my own use and watched a lot of YouTube how-to videos, I naively expected it to go not perfectly, but fairly smoothly. And of course it didn't. So I'm making this short video to point out some of the pitfalls I encountered, just in case you're crazy enough to want to do this yourself. The aim of this video is just to point out some particular obstacles I encountered as a sort of lessons learned exercise. Now, some of these are really obvious, and others maybe not so much, but they all made that first video harder than I expected. And they're not really unique to YouTube. They could apply to videos you make for most any purpose where you don't want to look totally inept. Here's my first obstacle. Doing green screen is hard. Now you might ask why a YouTube video novice would start out with green screen in the first place, but my studio is small and my background is a mess. YouTube experts will give you some rules for working with green screen in a small space, but the real world is messy. They'll tell you that you should light your background evenly, using the biggest, softest lights possible, and stay in front of them. Also, you need a backlight to separate you from the background and subdue that green fringe, which is light reflected off the green screen. But here's the real world for me. My working area is only 6 feet wide, and I have only 3 feet between the back of my chair and the green screen. Together, those mean it's tough to light the green screen evenly and to have a backlight that isn't just lighting up the top of my gray head. The general recommendation is to add your background in editing and to remove the green screen there. I didn't do that. Why not? Well, doing it in the editing software allows changing the background, resizing clips, all sorts of control options, using plugins. But it takes more work and expertise. OBS is easier to use, and it actually gave me better results, at least for this first video. I guess the lesson here is that the quest for perfection is kind of a losing game, but you just have to keep plugging away at it and get better. Or at least that's what I'm hoping. Now that we got that out of the way, so to speak, my second problem is that audio is more complicated and more important than you think it is. I had at least 3 problems that any novice is likely to face at some point. One is the multiple volume controls problem. For my microphone, there's a volume control in my audio interface. There are 2 in OBS. And there's also the Windows one, and getting all those adjusted so that you get a reasonable volume output without clipping somewhere or distorting is not easy, and I didn't do a very good job of it the first time. The second thing I ran into was a bit of an interference problem. There were some noise blips that showed up in the second batch of clips that I shot for that first video that weren't there during the first one, and eventually I realized it was because I was trying to control a second camera using my phone, which was sitting about a foot away from the audio interface and from the microphone. So something that was going on in the phone was making funny noises in the audio chain. That's the kind of thing you just have to track it down and see where it's coming from. I also had a background noise that I sort of suspected was going to be there, but it was bigger than I thought. My air conditioning blower is only about 30, 40 feet away from me here. It's through a closed door, but it turns out you can hear that, and you can see it rather plainly on this frequency response plot, in fact. It's that nice little peak around 180 hertz on this graph. The lesson here, I guess, is that you have to test and test some more with your audio, and then you have to review the footage as you shoot it, not just the video, but the audio, and I was a little sloppy about that the first time around. The third issue is that changing to a high-powered video editor is going to be frustrating and slow for a while. I decided to use DaVinci Resolve instead of the video editing software I've been using for years because it's really powerful, but it's also different from what I used previously. I don't know whether you know this, but the reference manual for DaVinci Resolve is 3,981 pages long. So basically it has so many functions and controls that I had to look everything up, which meant I used the crash and burn technique for learning this or any new software, which is you learn just enough to get started and then you look things up as you need them. And that works. But boy, is it going to take a while. The next obstacle was that talking to a camera is very different from being behind one. I've shot a lot of video, but always from behind the camera. Obviously, I'm not an actor, and that really required a major change in mindset. I needed to be able to see myself, which meant I had to change from a desktop to a laptop computer so I can have it sitting right here. And I needed to be able to watch my gestures and that sort of thing, especially at the beginning and ending of clips when you'd like to be able to blend them together. I also needed to have a script or at least a good outline of one, because frankly, at 80 years old, I'm not that great at remembering everything I was going to say. I needed to be able to see it in some form, which meant I needed a teleprompter. Well, teleprompters are a pain in the first place, and in the second place they're expensive, and in the third place I don't really want one. So I compromised basically by putting my script outline on the big monitor that sits just below the video camera I'm using, so that at least I could see it without having to do that. And it worked okay. Since then, I've tried out a website called QPrompter, which is sort of like a browser version of a teleprompter. And I'm using it for some of this, and it actually works okay, except that you have to get the timing just right, or you either wind up waiting for it to catch up to where you want to be, or you're trying to hurry up and finish your sentences before it goes off the screen. But it's a useful tool. The last thing I want to throw in is that all the little extra bits in making YouTube videos take a lot of time. Looking for stuff, for example. I wanted a sound effect for my first title sequence. Well, I spent about an hour maybe going through stuff looking for what turned out to be a 6-second sound effect. I liked it, and I'm probably going to go on using it for title clips in the future. But boy, that was a lot of work for 6 seconds. Same thing is true with music, which I'm not really doing anything with. And most of this doesn't lend itself to have, music playing in the background, but eventually I'm going to need to do that, and that's going to take even more time. The one outdoor clip I shot, I didn't have a shotgun mic, so I had to find and borrow a wireless microphone just for that, whatever it was, 20-second clip. It worked, but it took time. And then, of course, if you're going to make YouTube videos, you're going to want a logo. You have to decide what the thumbnail for each of your clips is going to be. And ideally, you're going to make those thumbnails so that they help them to stand out. So all of that stuff probably doubled the amount of time I spent editing that first video. The bottom line, I guess, is that you probably won't get it right the first time or the second time. I certainly didn't, and I doubt this is going to be perfect either. But if you review what you've done, and if you get useful feedback from your viewers, which I'm hoping I will, then you should be able to steadily improve. And I'm really counting on getting some of that feedback. So if you got something to contribute, be sure to leave a comment. And you're welcome to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. Of course, I forgot one thing that wasn't in my script outline. I will leave a link to the video this video is talking about in case you want to go and watch it and see the things that went wrong. And again, thank you for watching.